Life as a man is shit. It's always been shit. It's never been good. When men wake up and say, I'm depressed and life is hard and I'm sad and I'm struggling right now, I say, okay, throughout history, men have always struggled. Happiness is for children and women. Name a time in history it was better to be a man. Was it better to be a man in World War II? Was it better to be a man on the Titanic? Was it better to be a man in the Napoleonic Wars? Was it better to be a man when you were sitting in Vienna and the Mongol horde arrived, ready to decapitate any male and enslave all the females? When's it ever been good to be a man? Building the pyramids, was that fun? It's always sucked. The only time being a man ever is good is if you become an exceptional man, which is even something feminists admit. Because feminists sit and complain about men and say, well, men have this, men have that. But they're talking about 2% of men. They say men have the best jobs. 2% of men have the best jobs. Most men carry trash. So you're talking crap. So everyone accepts that the best possible human experience that exists is the top 2% of men. Anything below that sucks as a man. You're better off being a chick. So what I say to men is, look, life's hard. It's always going to be hard. It's always going to suck. It always has. The only way to get out is to become excellent and perform at a level where your echelon is so high that you get to live this brand new experience. You need to become strong and smart and interesting and charismatic. You need to become rich, powerful, well-known, connected. You need to do it. A lot of people are obsessed with the idea of happiness. And especially as a man, I think that happiness can actually be a very destructive motivator. And when men sit and say, I want to be happy, I want to feel happy. To feel happy, a lot of the time, you're looking for temporary hedonism. To be happy, you want to get drunk or take drugs or do something stupid temporarily, and it's very short-lived. We're in a war right now. You just talked about narrative control. That's exactly what it is. They're trying to demoralize us so they can give us narratives that we're forced to accept. They're trying to control, we say about controlling a geographical area with a hot war. Okay, it's not a hot war, but they're trying to control the internet and control information because it's an information war. Alex Jones, InfoWars, he's nailed it. They're trying to control intellectual property and control property online to be able to purport certain narratives to a demoralized populace. We're in a very active war right now.
Yeah.
And just because there's no guns firing, well, there are, but just because you don't see guns firing, you think you're not in a war. You are the subject of a war ongoing. There are two teams fighting right now above your head. And depending on which team wins, depends on the narratives you're going to end up holding and your children are going to end up holding. So this is what's so interesting to me when we talk about masculinity and cowardice. If you understand that a war is going on, surely if you're half a man, you're going to look at the two teams and you're going to choose one and you're going to go join the team you believe in. Only a true coward would sit down and be quiet and say, let the two teams fight it out, and whichever team wins, I'll just agree with them, which is what a lot of people are doing. But surely you should sit and see that this war can't be avoided. Yes, I'm suffering because I ran my mouth too much. Yes, they're going to try and put me back in jail. Probably going to succeed. I'll be back with the cockroaches. Fine. I decided to make that decision. I'll smile knowing that I lived true to my heart. So I'm not a coward. But if you're sitting there being a coward thinking, oh, maybe I can avoid the fight, you're really a fool. Because if you say, I refuse to fight, you don't end the war. You just end your control over the outcome of the war. And all you're doing is handing your entire fate to other people. And perhaps the good guys will win. And then you can sit there and be happy. But you'll know you were a bitch. Or perhaps the bad guys win and you're going to wish you fought while you had a chance. But you can't avoid this fight. I run my mouth and I'm in a lot of trouble. Cool. But the war is coming for all of us. I don't know why anyone's sitting there saying, oh, maybe I shouldn't talk. You can't escape it. If you don't want to tell the truth, you're just going to end up a casualty of war. You're going to get there anyway. So, and I'll ask you, if we lose this culture war, won't you feel better you tried? But this is my question to all the, and I guess this is a question to the men at home. If you accept a war is ongoing, and you accept that it's for the fate of your bloodline, how do you live with yourself as a man if you're not trying to make the good team win? Perhaps we're all going to die. Perhaps we're all going to lose. Perhaps you'll all end up in jail alongside me. But don't you feel like you'd be happier as a man if you stood there and said, I fought my hardest against them, and I tried to save the children and my bloodline and my society and my land and the people I cared about. I tried my best and they got me, but I tried. How are you going to live if you just don't try? And I find it amazing that these people out there who think that, okay, if I avoid the fight and I take the money, or if I avoid the fight and I have the peace and quiet, if I avoid the fight, I have the Super Bowl. How broken are you in your soul to think those things matter more than doing what you know is right? Look at humanity. It's always been men sacrificing their lives for what they know is right. I say I sacrificed my life. I did a little bit of jail and I've lost my money, or some of my money. Boo-hoo. I haven't had to charge at gunfire yet. Yet. But there are men who were braver than I, fighting for ideas they understood less than I understand the current idea. And perhaps their fight wasn't even as important as this one. I would argue there's been times where men took up arms to resist the invading horde. And if they let that horde come in and control their society, they would have been less oppressed than we're about to be. And they sacrificed their life. And we have men here at home going, well, maybe, I don't know. This mass pandemic of cowardice is how they're getting away with this, which is why I believe, I've said this a bunch of times, I also believe it's the reason they attacked me. They find masculinity so threatening because masculinity protects. I won't sell my soul because I'm a man. That's it. I am the man. And I don't care if I go destitute. I'll knock on your door and ask for a meal, and I'll continue to walk on my way towards wherever I'm headed as a man. I'm not going to sell my soul for money ever. And anybody who's sitting here trying to avoid this battle, all I'll say to you is that there's going to come a time, perhaps when the battle's over and we've lost, that you're going to wish you started saying the right thing. Because I feel like that time's running out. Yeah. I feel like we have a few years left where there's any semblance of freedom and also any semblance of social mobility. It's soon going to be so polarized. I said this on a podcast a long time ago. There's going to be have-nots and have-yachts. It really is going to get there. You have a certain amount of years to get money or get a network or tell the truth before they finally put the schism in the world, and you have the AI serfs who are controlled by their facial recognition, and you have the elites who don't have to listen anymore, and time is running out. And that's what's scary, because Patrick Bet-David, he made a video explaining that I don't know the exact numbers, 42% of the world population has an election this year. Yeah. Or something like that. There's the largest Muslim country has an election. America has an election. The entire world has elections in the same year. I think it's unprecedented with the number of people who get to vote. And some people see that as a massive opportunity, and I guess it is. But I see that, I'll be honest with you, as a power grab.
Yeah.
I see that as a power grab. I think there's a global power grab that's going to take place this year. I think that everyone who should win isn't going to win. I think that it's going to be the final nail in the coffin for freedom and individual liberty. I think they're going to throw me in a jail cell for a long time for talking too much. I think that anyone else who speaks up is going to start getting thrown in a jail cell. I think the people who understand what's happening are going to be too scared to speak because they're cowards. And I think that once they have absolute control, they're going to implement AI and CBDCs, and I think we're all fucked. That's what I think. And I think the only answer to that I have found, and I want to make this clear as well, because a lot of people ask about my reversion to Islam. The only kind of nations I see which worship anything above money are the Muslim nations. I think they're the only nations who sit and say there's something more important than money. No, we will not teach LGBT to children. We don't care about what money you offer us or what sanctions you put on us. That is haram. They seem to be the last people with anything that they worship above money, because if you only worship money, eventually you're going to end up controlled and corrupted. And that's why I think Islam's one of the last resistances to this insanity. And perhaps you can move to Qatar and you can worship God and you can pray 5 times a day like you're supposed to, and you can have a very happy life. But outside of that, I'm struggling to find answers. You can go to Fiji and hide on a tropical island and eat coconuts, perhaps, but not everybody can do that. It's a very small island. It's scary, and I think a huge power grab is coming. And once they cement that power, anybody who tries to talk against it is in a lot of trouble.